Chapter 39. You left Hosea? William asked. Yes. I felt the tears line my face. I hugged my legs into my chest. After 10 years of waiting and only 10 months of dating? You left him, William repeated. Why would you do that? I hurt everyone who has ever loved me, I said. I do it without wanting to or even knowing I do it. That time I could feel this thing inside of me, like building pressure fated to go off. I had no idea when, and all I wanted to do was get away far from him as I could before it did. So you left him to not hurt him? Yes. But you hurt him by leaving him, William said. Not as much as if I had stayed, I argued. I lessened his hurt. But why would you? Why? I don't know, I said, and shook with a fresh wave of tears. Perhaps I purposely sabotaged the relationship I had to destroy the intimacy he and I were developing. Perhaps I was dangerously close to revealing my emotions. Perhaps it was all subconscious and I was sabotaging all of this in such a way that I looked like a victim, or maybe I was simply running. Commitment issues, William proposed. A person with commitment issues can still be intimate, I argued. I can't. I can't be married. I just can't be close. When I feel vulnerable, I go cold, painfully frigid. These aren't my words. This is how others have described me. I am formal, I shut down, and my heart grows cold, so that I can't hurt. But those who are close, those who feel it, they are pushed away. They stand at the door screaming to come in, and I can't let them. They'll hurt me. I felt William watch me as I cried into my knees. Problem is, Hosea wouldn't leave me. My mind was dark. I had stopped mothering my children. I was spiraling out of control. I was shutting down. The music hit me. I felt everything and then nothing. Not guilt, not love, not lust, not hate. I went cold and logical to attempt to quell and control the urges, but something inside of me still said I needed to sleep with Nick. I knew if I slept with Nick, I would hurt Hosea. I couldn't hurt Hosea, but I felt myself losing control. I felt like a bomb was strapped to my chest, counting down to my own demise, and I couldn't get it off. I had to get away from Hosea as quickly as possible to protect Hosea. Leaving Hosea would hurt him a lot less than betraying Hosea, and so I broke up with him. It was like a black hole that sucked me dry of every emotion. It left me writhing in that doorless room, naked on the floor, surrounded once more by my death men. I wanted to die, and I didn't know why. The night I slept with Nick, Hosea knew. I lied about nothing, but when he looked me in the eye and asked me if I had, I looked right at him and said, I do not lie, but if you ask me about that night, I will. Hosea had only one response. He asked that I speak to a friend of his, David. I loved Hosea. I would never tell him no. I agreed to speak to his friend. David was a student of psychology. He had no license, and it was made very clear to me that his friend was not giving me psychological advice. He came to me as a friend who I would confide in, and confide I did. Hosea spoke to David, then asked me if he could give David my email address. I agreed, and that afternoon I received an email. My first thought on David was that he was professional and smart. Within moments he had me opening up to him. I broke everything down rather logically. I explained how I felt about Hosea. I loved him. I didn't love Nick, but I wanted to fuck Nick. I didn't think of Nick, pine for him, or want him. But when he was around me, I wanted to fuck him. I had to fuck him. David asked me about the boys. I explained to him my need to be accepted by them. He asked me about Scott, and I told him everything. I told him about Joe, about Pissant, and my half-brother. David wasted no time and made it very clear that I cheated on Hosea. I argued with him and said that I left Hosea first, and I had. David insisted it didn't matter, that because I dumped Hosea with intent to sleep with Nick, it was still considered cheating. He asked if I had even apologized to Hosea. I was angry. I didn't feel I did anything wrong. I didn't lie. I made it very clear to Hosea how I felt, what I wanted, what was wrong. I wasn't cruel. I didn't string Hosea along, nor did I try to talk between two lovers. I didn't need to apologize to Hosea about cheating on Hosea because I didn't cheat on Hosea. I made it very clear what I wanted, what I didn't want, that something inside of me was wrong, that I needed to sleep with Nick when I didn't want to, that I wasn't sure if I could help it. I told David about the bomb and how my only thought was to get away from Hosea as fast as I could before it went off. I did not sleep with Nick until after I had left Hosea. David said we never really broke up. In my mind, we had. David insisted I apologize and said accepting responsibility was part of the healing process. I agreed to apologize to Hosea for something I didn't do. The next few weeks, David and I talked. I ran through my experience with Scott. I did not discuss 9/11. I talked about Joe and Pissant. We identified my fear of men, how terrified I was around them. David asked if I was afraid of Hosea. I said no, but I was afraid of angry males, and Hosea was never angry, so I was fine with Hosea. David said he had an exercise for me. I felt an unease come over me. You need to be around an angry male, David had written. Panic hit me. I felt that emotion right away. No, I wrote back. You need to be around an angry male, he insisted. I can't! I will tell Hosea something that will make him angry, David explained. I wanted to scream. I hugged myself and started rocking. Please, no, I begged in that email. You need this. I can't. I'll do anything else. I can't be around angry males, I wrote. Why not? They'll hurt me, I wrote. They always hurt me. You need to be around them and note your body changes, David wrote back. You need to note your state of arousal. You need to do this. It's Hosea. You know he won't hurt you. I agreed. An hour later, I emerged from my room and called Hosea into my bedroom per David's directions. David said he sent you an email. Hosea followed me into my bedroom and sat at the computer. Already I felt my blood pressure rising. I hugged and rocked myself on the bed and waited. Hosea logged on to his email and read. A moment later, he punched my desk, and I ran for the door, but Hosea intercepted me. He pulled me into his lap while he shook with rage. The result were immediate. I wanted to fuck him. I wanted to fuck him and run. I braced for the beatings. My body responded, and I prepared for sex as his arm around me shook with rage. His body was like a cage, and I couldn't escape. I wanted to mount him and claw at him and fuck him. I wanted him to come so I could run, but Hosea wouldn't let me go, and so I shut down. I slid back into my mind, and slid once more to my worlds. The wind and the graying of Ireland flooded back to me, and the clouds moved in from the sea. I threw my head back to the skies and smiled. I could hear the stream nearby and wasted no time seeking it out. She called to me, and I listened. I found the stream, and I followed through the wood. How I missed my forest, my cottage, my realm. How I wished for nothing else but to stay there until I died. It was January. I had pulled away from the boys at work and poured myself into my book again. I hadn't slept with Nick since I started speaking to David. Hosea and I, not sure when or how, were back together. My boys didn't take the rejection well. The group split up and dwindled. Some of us quit the job and went on to other places. Those of us who were left went our own way. I had been speaking to David now for a month, and we had become fast friends. A little part of me had grown attracted to him, which I shared with Hosea as we drove into my subconscious. David walked me through the movies. How every time I watched a movie, I dissociated it with rape and felt I was expected to perform. We learned that I was able to watch the movies alone, but with another, my heightened sense of awareness and fear kicked in. With a male in the room, I braced for rape. We began exploring the avenues with Joe and Pissant and the damage they had inflicted. Hosea was still living in Boston and drove the 6 hours almost every weekend. Those weekends were spent jumping between emails to David and repairing our relationship. But most of all, I heard Angel. I couldn't see her, but I heard. Beneath the screams, she was trying to talk. Hosea and David insisted I needed to listen, but I couldn't make out her words. She was only ever screaming. A week of discussion and emails followed. They were adamant that I speak to her. I couldn't listen. I couldn't. The sessions would end before I could make out what she was saying. David had started working with Hosea as well. David would send off a response to me, then send one off to Hosea. We had identified my fear of men, which David determined was the center of all my issues. We had finally called my rapes for what they were, rapes, and we were identifying my daddy issues. David explained that my rapes had led to a fear of open spaces, fear of people in crowds, and a general fear of the unknown. Being locked in that room with Joe developed a strange fear of closed doors, caves, tunnels, and cars. I almost want to say it was a fear of inability to escape or a fear of loss of freedom, which I wonder is part of my problem with marriage. I was still left with the conditioning Scott had programmed into me with the movies. David would talk to me, and then I would leave the room and Hosea would answer his emails from David. When Hosea finished, I would return to my room and converse with David. I was enjoying the process. I was starting to feel in control again. My head was clearing and I could identify my urges and triggers. I could call them what they were and begin to control them. The word rape still left a vile taste in my mouth, but I had grown by leaps and bounds. I was with my children again and was responsible again. I truly can't tell you how long David and I wrote back and forth. Maybe a month, maybe 2. I can't remember. I do remember the last day we spoke very well. Okay, get out, Hosea said with a playful smile. Things had been going great between Hosea and I. I was understanding my problem and had learned to recognize the warning signs. I was learning to control my urges, or so I thought. I had learned to accept the word rape. No, I smiled. I want to stay with you. I climbed up on my bed. I promise I won't look. Okay, he said, but no peeking. I giggled and hugged the pillow, then buried my face and waited. I heard Hosea's hesitation, then the chorus of the clickety-clack of the keys. I was hopping, I was jumping, I was eager. I was in such a mood that day. I felt like I could soar and recalled the endless emails, the elation. I was finally free to open the boxes of emotions. I could handle them. I glanced over my shoulder, and in a matter of moments I slipped into the other world, and this one vanished.